You're listening to another episode of Full Strength Leader. On today's episode, I talked with Chris, also known as Spin Master, who is all about building real relationships, the kind where 3 years later, someone calls because that coffee chat still echoes, and now they're ready to change the world. And then, boom. His edge? Connecting dots others miss. Spotting the pattern between someone's vision and their unseen background, making sure everyone walks away knowing they got exactly what they needed. He's the connector, the coach, the fixer, and sometimes the amateur psychologist when talks go deep, which happens a lot in this game. Chris is wired to help founders, execs, and talent find their right team, their right moment, and he's confident but never arrogant, brash when it counts, ethical always, and current on real market shifts without chasing hype. He's aggressive on big opportunities, but effective, not animalistic. He's likable, charming, authentic, and funny in the right spots, and tough without being mean. The bottom line, he's a genuine human connector, and he believes that human connection is rocket fuel. Trust, mutual best interests, feeling truly heard. That's when careers turn into life-changing moves and everyone knows it was the right call. And on today's episode, we talked through a lot of different things ranging from what it's like to be on the recruiter side, how to lead in that space from both being yourself as well as the company and the person looking for a position, and what it looks like in company culture, which is something that everybody needs to know a little bit more about. So, let's go and take a listen. You didn't get to where you are by playing small. You got here by outworking, outthinking, and outleading the room. But the higher you climb, the harder the questions get. And nobody hands you a playbook for this level. Welcome to Full Strength Leader, the podcast for executives, high performers, and leaders who refuse to coast with surface-level leadership advice and ready to do the real work. Hi, I'm Sabrina Ashley, applied neuroscience practitioner and leadership consultant. And this is where I bring you the intersection of science and strategy and where real leadership gets built. Every episode, I bring you the research, the real talk, and the frameworks you need to lead at your absolute best, even when things feel upside down and on fire. Because half-strength leadership isn't an option. This is Full Strength Leader. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Full Strength Leader. I am here with my friend Spin, and we actually met at a networking event a couple years ago now, and I saw him and he had yellow glasses on at the time, and I was like, oh my God, I need to go meet this guy. And I kept getting stopped by people on my way, and you were just about to leave, and I was like, I know that I don't know you, but you have yellow glasses, I have yellow glasses, and we should be friends. And so we took a quick picture together, and then you skedaddled because you had something else to get to. And we've had coffee, we've connected on LinkedIn, and we've kind of grown this really cool networked relationship from just being in the right room at the same time. So I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about you and what you do and anything that you're interested in for today.
Yeah, awesome. And you nailed it. That was the exact way we met, and I remember it vividly. And I still have my yellow glasses. I'm just not wearing them today. But can surely appreciate that connection. What I do and who I am. Well, things have changed a little bit in the last 7 weeks, but I spent 30 years in executive search in some way, shape, or form. So recruiting was my lifeblood. I loved every bit of it. I think the world of the industry and the potential that's there and everything else. But 7 weeks ago, I had the opportunity to join a nonprofit. And so now I run corporate development for a nonprofit. And so super excited about the potential there. A lot of what I learned from a relationship development standpoint in my prior career definitely impacts how I do and what I do, now. And I'm just super stoked for the mission and what I get to do every day and everything else. I mean, it's really, really cool.
Mm-hmm. Well, and after 30 years of being in recruiting, you have seen everything that could have happened and all the new things and all the craziness. And I'm sure you see the same things that I am seeing on LinkedIn of, oh my God, some people are demonizing recruiters and some people are not. And then you get to move into a development role. So you get to understand getting into that kind of situation too. And so, as somebody who has a lot of friends that are recruiters and always has, it's really interesting to me to see how people demonize the space, especially when sometimes they can be your best advocate.
For sure, for sure. And and that's, I mean, that's really and truly what separates good recruiters from bad recruiters. And like any industry, like any profession, like anything, there's good and there's bad. And people like to generalize and say all recruiters do this, or
Hmm.
and that's not necessarily the truth. But the reality is a couple of things. One, people have to understand really and truly what a recruiter does, because there's a big misconception out there. People misconstrue the recruiting industry and think that it's my job to find Cabrina a new role, and that I work for Cabrina, and so everything that I do is centered around Cabrina and Cabrina's background and what she wants to do and everything else. And to an extent, it's true. But the reality is, I work for my client. My client pays my fee. So, what my client asks me to go and find from an individual perspective is what I have to go and find. And so, if they say I need somebody that does this, that, and the other, and I'm talking to you, Cabrina, and you don't do that, I can't help you at that given point in time because it's not what my client is asking me for. And so a lot of times recruiters will get, messages or whatever. Why haven't you found me a job yet? Or why haven't I heard from you or whatever like that? It's because I don't have a client that's looking for somebody with your background. Do I want to help everybody? Absolutely. Would I love to help everybody find a job and place me? Yes, for sure. Every recruiter would love to do that. But really and truly, we're at the mercy of what our clients want. And sometimes, I mean, and it hamstrings us in certain aspects, because not everybody is going to be a fit, and you do have to tell people no.
Hmm.
And from a communication standpoint, I can't keep up with everybody because I've got responsibilities to my client, to go out and have these conversations with folks that are going to be a fit. So I can't keep up with everybody. I try, but a lot of times too, I'll ask candidates. I'm like, do you really want me to call you every 2 weeks to tell you that I've got nothing for you? I mean, is that really what our relationship is going to be
Hmm.
like and everything else? Because pretty soon you're going to tune me out. Wouldn't you rather hear from me when I've got something and it matches what you and I have talked about in the past, and it's something that we can kind of explore and go to?
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's a more meaningful relationship and a more meaningful conversation. It doesn't mean I've forgotten about you or anything like that, because that's far from the case. It's just I don't have anything that's a fit at that moment in time.
Yeah. So you spent a long time being a professional matchmaker. And I think that people forget that it's not just a job and a person, it's trying to find that right fit, just like somebody who's looking for a relationship is trying to find the right fit. And you're just doing it at scale. So it always makes me think about the scene in Mulan where there's the matchmaker and she's trying to get Mulan ready and she just gets angry with her because it's like, okay, this is what is expected. And so we demonize the person who's trying to help us and don't think about the fact of like, okay, well, what other things can I do? Is there other spaces that I can be in? Is there other ways that I can think about this? I was just talking about the Happiness Advantage book that with a client of mine yesterday, and he talks about this idea of everybody wants a yes or no. We think very much in binary. And sometimes there's a lot of different avenues that get us to where we need to go. I'm sure you've seen this in your own recruiting, is that if there's one position open, they might hire for that position and then need that other person that they didn't think that they needed. And it happens more than we think that it does. And sometimes you have to make a position for yourself. You have to make a name for yourself in this space.
Yeah, I mean, and that is where the really good recruiters shine when it comes to kind of candidate experience and how they manage their clients. Because a good recruiter takes the time and invests the time to go beyond the surface level stuff of, okay, here's your resume. Okay, here's the three, most recent things that you've done. Let's walk through the bullet points on your resume really quick. They don't bother to invest in who you are as a person, nor do they bother to invest in who their clients are, not only as individuals, but from a corporate perspective. Because the really good recruiters have relationships to where you and I are having a conversation, Cabrina, and we're talking about something. And you mentioned that, you'd really like to go and do this. Well, I know based on similar conversations that I've had with my clients and stuff like that, that they're like, the ideal person that fits here has this type of mentality or thinks about things this way or is this kind of creative or comes from this disparate background and everything else. And because I can put two and two together because I've taken the time to know that about you and understand that about my client, I can reach out and say, hey, I know you don't have a spot open, or I know you've got this one role open, but I want you to talk to Cabrina because I really think there's a fit there.
Mm-hmm.
And here's why. And, trust me that you're not going to be disappointed when you have this conversation. You're going to come away with something, and I have a really good feeling you're going to see the same thing I do about why I think she might be a fit on your team.
Mm-hmm. Well,
That's where the magic happens.
yeah, and I love this because there's so many different ways of leadership that are happening here. Because you now have this new position where you're doing a little bit of different things, which we'll talk about in just a second. But then you also have this experience of leading yourself, leading, helping companies lead themselves, because you're not leading them, but you're guiding them in a way. You're being that voice of reason, that Yoda to them. And then you're also doing the same thing for candidates. You're not technically in charge of any of these people besides yourself, but you're having to be like, hey, let me take your hand in this and show you exactly what to do so that you're ready for that next step. So, what are some of the big lessons that you feel like you learned that you're like, God, if people just knew this? And it might be multiple because of the many different people that are in this scenario.
I mean, I think the biggest lesson in what people forget, and you mentioned it briefly before we started this call, is everybody assumes that there's got to be like this one persona for this, and I've got to be like this for this, and when I'm doing this, it's this, and when I'm doing that, we're all people.
Mm-hmm.
And people relate to people, and the word authenticity and all that stuff, it's turned into a buzzword, and it's kind of lost its luster a little bit because everybody just tries to use it to, I don't know why they try and use it, but the reality is people want to know who you are as a human being. And the more that you can put all the ancillary stuff out of your mind and just answer a question, have a conversation, do the things that you need to do in a way that is yourself, is going to do you a lot more from a positivity standpoint than trying to think, well, if I answer that question, what do I think they want to hear, and
Mm-hmm.
what should I say, and am I worried about this? Am I worried about that? It's like, listen, at the end of the day, we work together. We're going to be in each other's company. Let's make sure we can get along. Let's make sure we can play nice in the sandbox. Let's make sure that we enjoy each other's company. Or if there's any kind of friction, we can identify it on the front end so that when we're there and we're working, we can just get to work and have a good time doing it. Work shouldn't be a chore. You shouldn't have to walk on eggshells, nor should you have to worry about, well, how this is how I was in the interview, and so now I've got
Mm-hmm.
to really work to be somebody that I'm not in front of the people I work with, and live that lie, because that's exhausting. I
Yeah.
mean, I can't be anybody else. What you see is what you get, because my brain doesn't function in a way that says, okay, be somebody else today. I'm like, no, 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 no. That's too much. I can't do it. So I got to be me. And that's what I always encourage people to do is just be you. Be honest, be vulnerable, but answer the questions in your own way. I mean, obviously be professional because you don't want to, just piss people off left and right by being, ridiculous. I mean, at the end of the day, I want to see who you are as a human being. And truth be told, if I would pump my clients full of truth serum and ask them what they're really looking for from me, I guarantee you it's not going to be, oh, the technical skills. It's find me the person that I can relate with that's going to help me solve the problems I need to solve and who I'm going to enjoy being around. And so it's
Hmm.
all those intangibles that you only get from having an authentic conversation with somebody. That's when a recruiter is truly effective. And that's where you as a candidate will stand out, is when you're
Hmm.
truly being yourself and that aha moment comes to somebody and says, yes, I see why you'd be a fit over here. It's obvious to me and it's going to be obvious to my client.
Hmm. Well, and you brought up a lot of really good points because I think that there's multiple things that we're seeing in the market right now. I have a client who's looking for a new position, and we were looking at some of the job descriptions, and I was like, this was obviously written by AI
Mhm.
because, she's trying to make sure that her resume goes with what is in the job description. And I'm like, they use these words, but I don't think that they know what they mean. And so we're having a Princess Bride moment constantly. And then when you do that, you're consistently just being blended in. And so I think this is where the authenticity piece comes in of how do I show up and how do I show up in such a way that even from this one or two pieces of paper that I'm giving somebody, they're going to see some of that, even if it's just in the fact that I use a bunch of different words or that I do a little bit of different things. Like I love the stories that I hear when people are like, I put my resume on a cake and I sent it to the office because I was
Yeah.
just so sick of getting no's. And, I've been there. The one of the jobs that I really wanted, I applied for that company 7 times and got told no 7 times. And I was like, okay, when do you just like throw in the towel? And so my rule is 7 because it's the number of completeness. So I was like, okay, I've now completed my cycle.
Yeah.
But it's being out there enough and showing up enough to where when people not just look at your resume, but if I Google you, what comes up? If I'm looking at your LinkedIn, what are you talking about? Because most people, even today, still use LinkedIn unless you're an influencer as a place for when I don't have a job,
Hmm.
which is good and fine, 15 years ago. But now there's so much more that you can add to make yourself the actual human that you are. And we come into most of these situations, dating, getting a job, making friends, all of these things that have to do with relationships as a 2D person when we're really 3D and hoping that people will like the 3D version of us and not realizing that there's a lot more dynamics to that and there's a lot more to hold within that 3D version than that easy 2D version that you come into an interview with.
100%. And I mean, and you highlighted or mentioned what is wrong with the hiring process right now. And that is the traditional method of applying and hoping to get a response and do all that. The reality is, and it's crazy when you hear this, but AI is creating job descriptions. Okay. We're teaching people to use AI to craft your resume to match the job description. And then there are tools that HR departments use. Now, granted, at the end of the day, somebody human is going to view your resume and say yay or nay, but there are tools that are being used to cull the list down. So when you have an AI created job description, a resume that matches the job description perfectly, and then you've got AI looking at this, everybody is still a perfect candidate. And
Mm-hmm.
so you haven't done anything to separate anybody because AI has told you all these people are a fit. So what do you have to do? You have to go back to what you should have been doing all along, which is I've got to look at and figure out who this person is. I need to see some glimpse of their personality or something in there that says this person is not just number one of 1,000 of the ideal candidate.
Hmm.
This is Cabrina, and Cabrina is what I'm looking for, and here's why. And so I encourage a lot of people that are job searching. I tell them, I said, don't apply online anymore because it's not worth it. The old school method of making an intimate one-on-one connection and forming a relationship and starting
Hmm.
conversations and everything else, that's what works now. That's what worked before, and is what will always will work. All the stuff in the middle is just noise.
Yeah.
Technology is not solving the problem. It's not doing anything. It's just making it easier for the talent pool to get bigger, but at the end of the day, it's not helping.
Hmm.
And so it's individual connections with individuals is where it's going to be, and that's how we're conditioned as human beings. It's like human beings relax or react and interact with each other is on a personal and on an emotional level.
Hmm. Well, because I'm sure you've seen this where somebody has the perfect resume. It looks like everything's up to snuff. And then all of a sudden they get into a position and you're like, holy crap, you know nothing.
Yeah.
How
Oh,
did
for
you
sure.
even get this far?
For sure. Because I mean, right now, I mean, I could have Chat GPT or Claude or Grok or whichever, choose your poison, create a resume for me that says that I'm the best software engineer on this planet and go and apply for a job at Anthropic because I want to make $1 million doing LLM work. And the reality is I don't know squat about squat, but on paper I can make myself look super, super impressive.
Hmm.
And then fake it till I make it, or I know I'm going to get found out and this is going to go nowhere, but I've wasted my time and the company's time going through those conversations for them to say, you're a knucklehead and you don't know how to do any of this. And me saying, yeah, you're right.
Hmm. Well, and it's so funny because I see it in corporate when I go and I train. I'll be like, how did you get here? You're a really nice person, but this is not the position for you. And
Yeah.
I don't know. And somehow a lot of people will skirt under this. And because we have a lot of high performers that listen to this podcast, I know that some of you are nodding your heads and going, "Oh my God, that's the guy that I work with. That's the lady that I work with."
Mm-hmm.
And it's amazing to me that companies just kind of they forget about it because everybody becomes a line item.
Yeah.
And so they're like, well, we've already spent money on this. So we're just not going to worry about it until it becomes a big enough problem that we need to worry about it. And so you end up in this cyclical problem where then we have the high performers that are on that team taking up the work for those people that got hired on because of these issues. And it comes down to how do we just get the problem solved from the very beginning? And you said the exact thing. It's relationships.
Mm-hmm.
It's who am I connected with? If I'm going into an office and dropping off my resume, which for a while people were like, don't come in, do it online. We don't want to see your face. Do this. And so I think people got used to, especially with post pandemic, going, okay, it's online. I'm going to do this. Nobody wants me to call them. Nobody gives any phone numbers out because there is some good things about the technology and being able to use it and being able to go faster with things. And AI has very much a spot in
Mm-hmm.
all of this, but it's deciding what is those things that we're going to hand over and delegate and what are we not going to delegate, which becomes how are we leading in a way that is true to the culture that we're trying to create within that corporation.
Yeah. 100%. You nailed it. You absolutely nailed it because culture's a culture's a misunderstood term. And it's an undervalued term, I think, in corporate America. Everybody talks about building a culture and doing all this and everything else. And the reality is, most of the time, it's surface level things like, oh, I want a cool culture. So we're going to give them free lunch and we're going to put a foosball machine in there and they can have all the energy drinks that they want. And that makes us cool and everything else. And then the reality is, people want to be someplace where they're appreciated, where they're challenged, where they're valued and where they feel safe to be themselves and can do the work, the meaningful work that they want to do in a place that's going to allow them to do that. I mean, that's
Hmm.
where true culture comes from, is when you hit on those things. And it doesn't matter if you got video games in the break room or unlimited PTO or whatever. All that surface level stuff that people are like, okay, that's great. But the reality is that they want those emotional connections to the organization and the work and the people that they're working with, because that's what gets somebody jazzed up about coming to work every day is that stuff. It's not the cool office or the superficial perks. I mean, that doesn't matter at all.
Yeah. Well, and this unlimited PTO and things like that. There's already so much dogma around it
Hmm.
and red tape because of the fact of like what is unlimited and what can we take and what does that actually mean? And nobody defines any of those things, so nobody uses it. America has the worst amount of people that don't take time off.
Yeah.
If we were in the EU or France, they're like, we end at this time, we have this many holidays, and when we have a baby, this is what happens. And so there is none of this boundary setting that is within corporate, which is part of culture,
Hmm.
is when we create good boundaries around how we treat our people. Because if we want our customers to be happy, we have to make our people happy first. And normally, for most companies, the amount that they pay towards payroll is more than they pay towards anything else on a line item.
Yeah.
So wouldn't you be going, this is a huge investment? I want to make sure that I use this investment to the best of my ability, which means that if a 4-day work week makes my people more productive, let's try it. Let's test it. Let's see what happens. And I don't see a whole lot of companies, especially the bigger that they get, giving that. I will say that Amazon has a really great policy that I love that I wish more people would adopt. And like any big company, nobody does it perfect, but they have a two-way door policy of if you can go backwards, go for it. And if you fail and you lose a couple $1,000s, it's not a big deal. You're not going to lose your job. You went and you tried something. And I appreciate that because having that fail forward mentality means that we're at the cutting edge of innovation. We're the people that are doing the best that we can. We're producing different things that other people wouldn't because they're too afraid to make a mistake.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I mean, and that's mistakes are part of it. I
Hmm.
mean, people make mistakes every day. I mean, there's only one perfect person. We know who that person is. And other than that, we're at the mercy of everyday life and what comes at us and what we do. And so failing, not doing something because you're afraid of making a mistake is such a paralyzing thing. And it paralyzes not only an individual, but it paralyzes organizations and everything else. But again, going back to the culture piece, creating a culture where it's like, listen, we want you to do your best work. We brought you here for a reason. And we know that you're not going to be perfect, but we are giving you the freedom, the creativity, and the resources to do the best that you absolutely can for our organization. And we're gonna whatever happens, and we can roll with it. Now, I mean, obviously you can't be fiscally irresponsible or corporately irresponsible and
Hmm.
drive a company in the ground because you said, well, I thought I was doing the right thing by blowing up the plant and everything else. But I mean, reality is people need to know that they're supported, that it's like, hey, if this is what you think you can get out of this, we're behind you 100%. Let's see what happens. And if
Hmm.
it doesn't work, let's go back to the drawing board and try it again, because the overarching idea or what we're trying to accomplish is truly what matters. And as long as we keep our eye on that, it's like, okay, like your rule of seven. Hey, we tried this, it didn't work, so we're going to try it again. And if that
Hmm.
doesn't work, we're going to try it again. And we're going to try and we're going to try and we're going to figure it out and we're going to iterate. It's the whole agile kind of principles and stuff like that a lot of people, don't respect or understand. But to me, I mean, it makes perfect sense. this didn't work. Let's tweak what didn't work and try it again and see what happens. And let's make incremental change and do some of this, because that's where progress gets made. That's where breakthroughs happen. That's where good stuff comes from.
Well, and coming from a background for me as coming from Disney corporate and then coming from tech corporate, I watch and I am blessed to have been in two very specific areas where mistakes and data are things that are looked upon as like, oh, yeah, okay, well, that didn't work. Let's try it again. And then I go into other companies and I go, okay, we don't have any of this culture here. And I think that Agile is a really good example of this because we get the ability to look at the data and tweak and change. And instead of waiting for, a lot of people wait till the things are happening in the market. We see this with social media platforms. If Facebook does one thing, then Instagram does it, and then LinkedIn does it, and then TikTok does it. And everybody's just following who's ever brave enough to make the move first. And when you do that, you're always behind the eight ball because you're trying to catch the wave. Mike Michalowicz has a book about this called, I think it's called Surf. And he talks about how you're waiting there to catch the wave. And most people wait until the wave is a little too far where you can't catch it anymore. And it's the people who actually get on the top of the wave that are the people that were like, oh my God, they got their lucky break, or they're the overnight success and they got exactly what they wanted. And it wasn't because they somehow got lucky. It was because they were looking for that opportunity and were in the right place at the right time because they knew by trial and error where to be.
Yeah, I mean, and you just mentioned a company that I respect for a lot of reasons. Disney. Okay, so Disney, everything is about, well, you may have different instruments, and we may take that offline, as you may say, okay, yeah, sure, that's what you think. Reality may or may not be that case, but from my perception, Disney is all about the customer experience, the
Hmm.
guest experience. How can we do everything to make somebody interacting with any of our properties, locations, anything better? Because that's where the magic happens. And that's where the magic happens in life is experiences and everything else. And so Disney doesn't shy away from innovation. Disney doesn't shy away from technology. Disney doesn't shy away from using tools and techniques and everything else, but that end goal in mind of the user experience constantly has to be better.
Hmm.
We want it to be awesome. That's how companies should be looking at what they do. And that's the kind of culture that you want companies to build, is how can we make our employees have a better experience? How can we make
Hmm.
our customers have a better experience? How can we make our vendors have a better experience? Because all the benefits or the rewards from all of that, and most people measure that in kind of fiscal or financial benefits, all that's going to come if you've got raving employees that love what they do, which means you've got raving customers because the experience is awesome every time they interact with you or somebody from your company. Your vendors love to do business with you because business is booming.
Hmm.
And so it all comes, but everybody's after all this, tactile stuff. And it's like, make the experience great. Leverage all that you can to make the experience great and be focused on that, and you win every time.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, and so I have a Disney story specifically about this. When I was in the back offices, so you work behind Mickey and Minnie's house in
Okay.
Disneyland. And one of the things that they had hired somebody in, and he was a young guy, and he was like, here's what we're going to do, and here's what we're going to pass down to the people in the parks. I had worked in the parks prior to being in the corporate side. And he was walking me through this while we were sitting at lunch one day. And I was like, I want you to clear your schedule for tomorrow because I don't think that what you're trying to do is going to work. And let me show you why, because he had this idea of how the employees within the park, the cast members, did their jobs because he came from something that was similar but not Disney.
Yep.
And
Okay.
so there was already that preconceived notion. And I was like, hey, we're going to go walk through. And so walking him through the park and being like, this is what this is like on a daily basis. This is what the cast members are experiencing. So if you implement this piece that you're trying to implement, you're going to get so much pushback that you're not going to get the results that you want. So how do we make it to where they experience this well? And it was really interesting to like watch that light bulb moment for him of, oh my God, I never thought about that, because we are so focused on, does the ROI come in? Is this investor going to be happy with this? Do we have people in office so that the people that are on the board are happy with us? And so we're not thinking about all these other things that make our people so much more productive that we have dozens and dozens of studies on with hundreds of thousands of people.
Yeah.
So it's not like we can sit here and pretend like we just don't know. We have the information. It's just like, I don't remember the exact percentage, but if you have a work best friend, you are, I think it's over 50% more productive than when you don't. So why would we not buddy people up? Why would we not try and, there's this idea of getting people off the bus. And I like to think about it as like, who do I need to put next to each other on the bus? Because what if we have a really great employee that we've spent at least their first year's salary training them that first year, plus paying them? So we've already invested a ton of money in this person. And now we're just going to kick them off the bus because it's more convenient. But what if I moved Bob over next to Larry instead of Sue? And all of a sudden we see this huge productivity go up because they work better together. They have more things that they can do that work on projects, and they work together better because they're friends. Those kinds of dynamics are so important within a business setting. And I think we go, oh, those are soft skills. Those are not things we need to worry about. And I always tell people, do you know why? Do you know why hard skills and soft skills are called what they are? Okay, so hard skills were called hard skills because of the fact that they were anything in the military that had to do with metalworking. Soft skills were everything else.
Interesting. Okay.
So we have demonized, and they begged. There was a group of people that begged them to change this. But because it had started from a military standpoint, that's what they called them. You were a hard skills worker, you were a soft skills worker. And so when we did that, people were like, well, hard is good. It's better. It's good to
Yeah.
be hard instead of soft, because soft is not. We have this connotation of, if I'm soft, then I'm not the kind of person who can like take it and be professional and in the space. When
Right.
really, the soft skills, communication, relationship building, being able to work within a group of people, is the most influential and the most productivity driven kinds of skills to have. And that's why you hear people go, well, we're looking for somebody who is out of the box thinking. They want that because they know statistically that that's going to be good. But then we don't create the culture and the space for those people to thrive.
Yep.
So then they can't
Yep.
think outside of the box because I'm being told, well, that's not a good idea. Oh, no, you can't do that. Oh, we tried that, but it didn't work. Or this is how we've always done it. There's in 12 South in Nashville where we live, there is a bench out there that says something to the point of, the biggest ideas get to the graveyard by the idea of, we've always done it this way. And it's that constant, how do we innovate and how do we move forward? And this is why training and getting in front of your people and trying new things, even when it's uncomfortable, is so important, which is why I talk a lot about nervous system regulation and this communication piece.
Yeah.
Because if we can get people feeling safe, psychological safety within an organization, people are a lot more willing to go, hey, I know you're my boss, and I have this really great idea because I'm on the floor doing this every single day that will make it 10 times faster, or that will bring us in more customers. And so many companies are missing out on this because they have their best kept secrets are the people that they're keeping quiet.
Yeah. For sure. For sure. And that's sad. That's
Mm-hmm.
really, really sad. But that's, I mean, that's become societal norm. And it's unfortunate because the companies that are ultimately successful in doing what you just described are looked at as anomalies.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well, they managed to do that, but we really and truly don't know how they did it. So we can't mimic that, or
Hmm.
let's not even pay attention to them because they're an anomaly. That's not how the real world works. Where in reality, it's like we should be doing a deep dive on what the heck they're doing because we should be doing that because they've mastered it or they've figured it out. And what they figured out,
Hmm.
it's not some secret sauce or anything like that. It's common sense and it's how human beings are human beings around other human beings.
Hmm. Yeah, well, and we're seeing this with Jesse Cole and the Savannah Bananas. They have blown up.
Yeah.
And Mike McAllowitz was talking about them years ago before everybody knew who they were. And we have just watched them over the years. Like I saw them in a small stadium, and then I got to see them in a big stadium. And you see the difference of how much it builds over just 1 year with them. And he's written books, he talks, he does keynote speaking in a lot of places. And people do the same thing. They're like, well, that's cool. If I had a baseball team, maybe I would do that too. And so instead of looking at the lessons as something that we can take and go, okay, how can I take this version of this colored glasses and put these on and see the world through this lens versus the one that I'm seeing it through? What would be the differences and how can I change those things?
Yeah, and you mentioned the Savannah Bananas, but I always look back at Danny Meyer and Union Square Hospitality and Will Guidara and his stuff around Enlightened Hospitality and everything else and what they've created from a culture perspective and how that permeates and how it's not limited to, well, that only works in Danny Meyer's restaurants or that only works in Will's restaurants. It's no, it's that feeling of camaraderie and hospitality and doing right by other people and treating people well and all those things that you were taught as a kid, like your parents drilled into you, but you're just like, oh my God, stop, mom and dad, I don't want to hear it anymore. Stop telling me
Yeah.
to be nice and do all this other stuff. It's like, no, 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 that's reality. That's how we're wired as human beings. That's how we're going to get the best out of ourselves and out of somebody else is by being that way. But more people look at that as kind of a fad or that's all touchy feely and that's all that. And then it's like, no, 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 no. Like that's what real success looks like. And that's how you build a successful, culture and a successful organization for sure.
Yeah. Well, and if everybody could feel like they're not going, oh my God, it's Monday
Yeah.
every single week, how much more productive would just your Mondays be?
Right.
And how much would that add to the bottom line? And I think it's looking at those tiny things instead of like, well, we're going to have a masseuse come in or we're going to have the pizza party that you mentioned and going, what actually makes people want to do this? What
Yeah.
do they really want? And asking your people, what do they really want? Because it's probably not the pizza party.
No, no, it's definitely not. It's definitely not. Because I know that there are studies have been done that like perks and money fall way down on the list, further down than what most people would expect. I mean, most people are, if you ask them, it's like, hey, I want to be challenged. I want to work on something meaningful. I want to get behind the company's mission and really understand. I want to work around good people. I want to be appreciated and understood. I mean, all those things, it's kind of like that doesn't cost a company anything. That's
Mhm.
just allowing human beings to be human beings and operate in an environment where they can do their best work.
Yeah. Well, and now that you've switched over
Hmm.
to something that's not quite recruiting, you can tell us a little more about what you're doing now. And because you're moving from the for profit to the nonprofit, which
Correct.
does have some of that uh, kind of built into it of, hey, I want to do something more. I've met so many people that have had really great paying jobs who take lesser paying jobs and they're happier and
Yeah.
they want to be there, even though the money is not as good as it used to be,
Yeah.
because of the fact that there is some things about having some fulfillment with work.
100%. I mean, and I am in that boat. I am in that boat for sure. And so what I'm doing now, I mean, I work for an organization called Persevere. And what Persevere is a nonprofit, been around since 2019, but what Persevere does is we teach technology skills to folks that have been justice impacted, injustice involved. And we help them learn skills while they're in a facility. And then we help them find employment along with ancillary stuff, access to transitional housing, mental health counseling, financial literacy, transportation. They've got a case manager that works with them on certain things to help them get their life in order completely. And so that's our mission, is to help folks that have come out that have been justice involved and justice impacted get back to living their best life, because their worst day, their worst decision shouldn't define what the rest of their life looks like. I mean, second chances are real, second chances are deserved, and so that's our mission. That's what we do. It's super awesome to see the impact that we're making, and the things that we're able to do. And so I'm thrilled to death to be there, and I'm super excited in the role that I'm in and what I get to do every day for sure.
Which is so cool because of the fact that you have seen so many different things, and
Hmm.
you've seen this with people who are not in that situation, and then going into this situation and being able to say, okay, here's what this looks like. And I think this speaks to what we were just talking about too, of people, everybody makes mistakes.
Yeah.
It's that old Hannah Montana, everybody makes mistakes, everybody has bad days.
Yes.
And so, how do we help people turn around? And when we do that, it makes society better overall.
100%.
Because when we, yeah, go for it.
No, I was going to say, I mean, if you think about, and there are studies that are published about this, and I'll use Persevere's numbers as an example, but we're not the only ones doing this, and I'm sure that there are companies that are doing as good or better than we are, but I just know our numbers. And so everybody talks about recidivism. And that's the goal, is to stop recidivism and everything else. Well, the national recidivism rate sits somewhere between 68 and 70%, depending on where you're measuring and what you're measuring. Persevere's recidivism rate after they go through our program and have access to our services is 1.8%.
That's amazing.
So we're making a difference, in what we do matters. And it matters not only for the people that are hiring these folks coming out, who are the hardest workers and understand the opportunity that they've been given, and so they want to do so well and do all that, and so they'll run circles around other people, and be happy to do it. But also for the companies. I mean, look at what you're getting. I mean, you're getting an employee that is so driven and so appreciative and so happy to be
Hmm.
there that they can't help but do well, because because they're just jazzed up about having this second chance. And then society, it affects their families, it affects their community, it affects the city that they live in, it affects the people that they come in contact with and everything else. I mean, the positivity just permeates. And so you look at that and you're just like, this is a no-brainer. But spreading the word and kind of getting to tell the story and do all that, that's what I get to do every day, because there's no charge for these services for these people. There's no fee involved if a company hires one of our people or one of our graduates. There's no fee that they're paying for these ancillary services. This is all free of charge, of just helping people be better people. And that's freaking awesome. I mean, I'm thrilled to death to get to do this every day.
Well, and like you said, it's so good for the people that are involved, but it's also good for society.
Yes.
And I think even if you're like, well, that's good for those people, everybody can agree that the world is a mess right now
Yes.
in a lot of different ways. And doing these things that make people individually better make each of us better.
Yes.
Because I walk through the airport, and I'll have to find the word for it and I'll send it to you afterwards. But there's a word for when you look at people and you understand that they have a story beyond what you can just see.
Yep.
And so I think about that all the time, having been a speaker coach for over a decade, of what's the story that these people have.
Yeah.
Because I have been blown away and surprised more times than I can say. And being able to say, okay, what was the things that happened? And doing the work that I do now, doing neuro coaching and training, a lot of times you find out that even the people that you work with that are sitting next to you, they have something that's underlying. And maybe that's why they get irritated when you say that thing, or that's why they have that reaction. And trying to look at every reaction that I have from people, good or bad, and go, why did that happen? Why was that the reaction that I got? And if it's a good reaction, how do I get it again? We do the same thing with our clients. And then if it was a bad reaction, how do I avoid doing that? How do I avoid getting that reaction? And a lot of people, this is where the emotions become a hindrance, is they let those guards come up, and all of a sudden now we can't look past those things. And so I'm sure you have that situation when you're talking with companies as
Yeah,
well.
for sure. I mean, there's a stigma there, just like there's a stigma around a lot of things, and a
Mhm.
lot of it is fear of change or a non-conform or a conformity complex where it's like you're not getting out of your own way to look at the possibilities and the potential. You're just laser focused on this and how it's always been, and this is what I expect and everything else. And you've got to teach yourselves, and you've got to teach, your organization to kind of open up a little bit, and don't be afraid to look at different possibilities or different opportunities, and just look at everybody on their merit, and what it is, because everybody's got a different story, everybody's got a different circumstance and everything else. So you can't just lump everybody in. That's the biggest stigma that it is, once you're a felon or you're an offender, you're always going to be. And so, oh man, I can't bring somebody into my organization like that because I'm going to have to watch over them like a hawk. Realize that the people inside organizations that get caught doing things that they're not supposed to do are not people who have offended before or are chronic offenders. They're the people that you would have never suspected. And so you can throw that argument out the window, because the people that are coming in that you're given the chances to, they don't want to screw this up. They've got a great opportunity in their hand, and they realize what they've been given. So they're going to be your best employees, not the ones you've got to worry about. It's the other folks you got to worry about. And so that argument doesn't hold water, but that's an argument that everybody automatically assumes. Oh man, I can't bring people with records into here because I mean our security is just going to go through the roof, and we can't trust anybody and all that other stuff. It's like no, 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 no. That's not the way it works.
Well, and a lot of this actually comes from the original brain science when people were starting to learn about how the brain works, because they decided, okay, it's like a machine. It can't be fixed. You're stuck this way. And
Yeah.
then years later, they fought it. Like this history of neuroplasticity is
Yes.
fascinating because of the fact that they fought of, no, this is how you are and this is how you're stuck. And this, we see this with kids with disabilities, like reading disabilities and learning disabilities, of this is how you are and this is how you're going to be. And, we're going to get you as far as we can, but, nobody has any bets on you. And then we found out that the brain actually changes and is malleable, and that senses can come from different things, and that the cells actually all can be the same thing. They can all accommodate for those things if given the chance.
Isn't that cool?
It's crazy. And so we see this, and there's a lot of this old science that we don't call it that, but that's where these ideas come from, because we were taught for forever. It's like left brain versus right brain.
Yeah.
We've disproven it over and over again, but we still sit here and go, well, you're creative, so that means you're not strategic. You're strategic, which means you're not creative. And we put people into these boxes
Yeah.
because it's easier for us to understand something when it's in a box.
Yes.
The problem is that nothing is in a box and it all bleeds over. And that bleed over is a lot of where the magic happens, because then you're allowing these things like a kid who has a disability to get to be the person that they want to be, or somebody who has had some kind of record or has been impacted by that, be somebody else and not stick with the statistic. Because, being a single mom, things like that. Like you look at the statistics, and I was always like, I'm not going to be one of the statistics. And I think a lot of people don't want to fall into that. But society, unfortunately, kind of creates the statistics because it's a self fulfilling prophecy at that point.
Well, too, and from a statistics standpoint and everything else, I mean, and this is an argument that I've always made just about like corporate America, is the folks at the top, because their days are full of whatever their days are full of. They lead, they manage, they decision make via spreadsheet and cells, Excel spreadsheets, Excel cells, pieces of data. And don't get me wrong, I mean, data is a powerful thing and it can be used and everything else, but data without context is a disaster waiting to happen. And so often, like you just gave with your Disney experience when you're telling the story. That guy came in and data showed him that if we do this, and this, that the outcome is supposed to be that and everything. And so we're going to do this. Like, no, 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 no. Go walk in the shoes of the people that you're going to have to tell to do something different and realize what happens. And you'll see that data doesn't hold water,
Mm-hmm.
it's the context that matters. And so the sooner that we can get back to context based decision making versus just pure data based decision making. And I mean, and I kind of blame Google for this whole data thing, because in the beginning, like, you heard all the articles years ago about they just take emotion out of it all. It's a data point. It's a data point. We make all our decisions via data points. And look at us, we're Google, and look at how big we've gotten. And so everybody starts doing that. But the reality is, data without context is dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of issues there, that a lot of decisions that are common sense decisions because you have context, that are made wrong when people don't take context into it and just look at a data point and say, well, we're just going with that because the data says so.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I have a talk on data storytelling that I give to both marketing teams and tech teams. And
Hmm.
it's two very different talks that have the same content in it.
Yeah.
Because on the tech side, I'm going, okay, you can tell any story you want with any of this data. And you know that. And then teaching marketing people how to use that data to tell the stories that they need to tell in order to sell whatever they're selling.
Yeah.
And so, how do you ethically tell stories around data is something that I've been really passionate about, because it is so easy to go, well, if you look at this one number and then
Hmm.
you look at the rest of the data set and you're like, that doesn't actually make this all make sense.
Yeah.
But if we pull that in, we see politics do this all the time. They'll get one tiny little thing and then they'll go, okay, I extrapolated it. And now this story is being believed this way. And you get enough people talking about it. And all of a sudden it becomes gospel because there's enough evidence behind it of people just repeating the same wrong thing. It goes back to what we were just talking about with the science that is stuck in society.
Yeah. I was just listening to a podcast yesterday, and it was scary because the guest on the podcast basically said that the invasion of Iraq happened because somebody took three data points and misclassified what they were and told an entire story around these three data points and created this whole thing that caused us to invade Iraq and do all this thing. And they said, if you look back and you look at the facts and truly look at it from an objective lens, you'll see that none of what was said holds water, and we shouldn't have done any of it.
Well, and that those are things that as a leader, you have to be the one that says, okay, this person has presented this to me,
Yeah.
but am I looking at all of the facts?
Right.
Do I have all the things that I need? And am I putting on my investigator hat
Hmm.
while I'm making this decision?
Yes.
Because at the end of the day, we have to say, this falls with us. Like, you make the decision. It doesn't matter if Bob from accounting and Doug from the data team said this, and this, if you make the decision and it's wrong.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, nobody's going to remember Bob and Doug. They're going to remember
No.
the person who made the decision.
100%. 100%. And that's why, You know, I mean, I'll just say it again. I mean, context truly matters, and that's where the big rub and where I think people are misusing AI because they assume that we want AI to do everything. Everybody's assumption is I want it to replace, everything, and I just want it to be me without me having to be me so that it just does all the stuff. AI doesn't know context. If you don't give AI context, its decision making is flawed. And everybody, nobody, I don't say nobody, there are people that argue the fact that that's why we will never truly have the whatever the term is for the autonomous AI that just does stuff, is because context has to be input by a human being, and what you're getting from your senses and everything else and from your environment contextually has to be there if you truly want a correct answer.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can't just crowdsource everything and make that as fact, because it's like, well, I was in that crowd in Brazil and this was happening, but when I went to the crowd in Alaska, that didn't happen. But oh, let's just pull it all together because a crowd is a crowd. And it's like, wait a minute, no, 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 no. That's not how it works.
Well, and nuance is something that we miss so much of.
Yes, for
And
sure.
so I love playing with AI and using AI and vibe coding things and
Yep.
trying new stuff and then teaching people how to use it. But there is this sense of you have to know yourself really well.
Hmm.
And anytime that you're building anything in AI, especially if you're trying to replace you in doing a task,
Yeah.
you have to be very honest with yourself because you use one word wrong
Hmm.
and you use it out of context how you would say it, but not how other people would say it. And all of a sudden, you have created a whole entire strategy or a whole entire series of
Yeah.
emails or blog posts or whatever it is that you're trying to do that you're like, this feels off, but I can't put my finger on it. And it's because of the fact that there's this nuance with people.
Yes.
Like, I can see how you respond when I say something. Like, if you say something that somebody doesn't agree with, they normally back up because they're trying to protect themselves. Or if somebody gets uncomfortable, they squeeze in. And so we understand those when we're looking at people. But until you start saying it, of like, here's why somebody did that, people go, oh, I see that all the time. I just wasn't registering it because subconsciously we are registering all these things and not realizing it.
Yeah.
And AI is not registering any of those things. So we're just like, well, that sounds good enough. I'm just going to push publish on that.
Yeah, exactly. Because I mean, I'm with you. I mean, I have all the tools. I use them every day. I use them for research. I play around with them and do some stuff. But at the end of the day, it's the same thing. I've got to proofread everything. I've got to put it through my own lens and say, is that really my opinion, how I would verse it, or is this interpretation of what I'm saying completely off because of one thing or the other? Because you can't just take it as rote and just kind of like you said, yep, they wrote the blog post for me, publish it because it's got to be good and it's got to be right because I told them sound like me and here's the subject matter. And so there
Mm-hmm.
you go. I mean, it doesn't work that way because nuance and context aren't there.
Yeah, well, it's just like standing in that crowd. If I'm standing from the stage looking down, I see a very different perspective. If I'm standing from any one of the different corners in the crowd, I'm seeing something very different. And so we think about things like the Eras tour with Taylor Swift. That was something that was thought about of like, what is each person seeing and how many times am I in that position to where they're seeing me that way? And most of the time we go back to that 2D versus 3D and we think about it just as like, here's face value, hoping that when somebody reads it that they're not going to go, well, I have a different idea of what that word means. Like there's so many times that I talk to people and I'll say something or they'll say something and I'll question it and they'll go, well, that's just how I grew up using that word or that's how that is. And I'll go, have you ever looked up the definition of that word? And I mean, we see this all the time. I've got little kids and they're Gen Z and Gen A.
Yeah.
And so they'll come home and they'll say a word. And I'm like, that's interesting. Have you ever looked that up? Do you know what that means? And trying to just educate on, like, okay, it's cool for words to change over time. And our dictionary will naturally do that because that's how language works. But do we now have an understanding of each other? Because it's just like emojis. I have
Right.
no problem with a thumbs up emoji. You
Yeah.
send it to a Gen Z and they're like, oh my God, they're mad at me. And I'm like,
Like what?
okay.
Yeah. It's like,
So,
uh-huh. But to go something in you just mentioned something about a concert, and I'm going to bring something up around, and it's going to tie in kind of authenticity and all this other stuff. And it's something, and I'm curious on your opinion because my opinion of live events has completely changed now that I went to an event and I can't remember what concert it was, but I got in early. I was able to have early access, so I saw rehearsal. And what put me off was I'm watching this band rehearse, and I'm watching them go through, and I'm watching the guy kind of run across the stage and jump and say a word like okay, in the crowd, you blah 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 blah. And I'm like, dude, I'm like, that's supposed to be real and authentic. Like you're supposed to do that in the moment. You're
mhm.
not supposed to have pre-rehearsed that at 2 minutes and 5 seconds into the second song, I'm going to run over here and I'm going to jump up and say, "Yeah, crowd, do the blah blah blah," and all this other stuff. It's like that's not an authentic reaction to what's going on. You're pre-planning emotion, and you can't do that. And so now I'm like, man, I'm bummed because I know that every live event now is pre-staged. And I'm like, do they really believe that? Or was it like, yeah, that we put it into plan. If you look at our sheet, 405 of song number 7, this is what I say, and here's where I say it, and this is how I'm going to point my hand, and this is what's going to happen. And I'm just like, man, I don't want to see that. I want the authentic. Point your hand because you want to, not because you
Mhm.
decided in a meeting that might be a good thing to do.
Yeah. Well, and I think I'm somewhat in the middle.
Okay.
I think you have to have planned chaos,
Yeah.
especially in something like that, because one wrong move can be somebody's life.
Fair.
And
Fair.
so there's too much big things, like we've seen Pink do the thing where she goes and goes up and then goes all the way around the stadium. Phenomenal documentary for anybody in leadership, is the Pink documentary. But then also with the Taylor Swift stuff, like what I loved about her whole concert was that during these surprise songs, those were spontaneous. She would
Okay.
decide like the week of that event and practice those of what she was going to do. And there was a lot of emotional pieces, especially during breakups and things like that, where people were catching little bits and glimpses of her being real and her having conversations with the people that were in that auditorium. So she did this in Australia for one of those. And I think that you have to plan for, here's where I get to be authentic and say something specifically to these people based on what I feel in this moment. And here's where I get to be more planned. And here's the steps for this because I have to be on this part of the stage at this moment in order for it to go down
Yep.
because that's part of the show. So
Absolutely. Okay.
there
Yeah,
has to
that,
be
that
some
makes
bits
sense.
and pieces there.
That
Um,
makes sense.
And having been in live events for a really long time and planning them from the background as well as being on stage, there's lots of moments where, like, to be completely honest, I will get on stage, I'll know exactly what I'm going to say, and I'll be, here's what I've done before. And I pretty much just black out and I just say whatever comes to mind at that moment. And then I get off and I always record myself because I'm like, what did I say this time? So I have proof.
That's awesome. That's
Um,
awesome.
And it's one of those things that I think most people do that is that like there's lots of authentic moments. Like I was speaking at a local podcasting thing here in Nashville and nobody was paying attention in the room because I was talking about email marketing, which is kind of boring, but I really like it. So nonetheless. And I was like, you know what? You people can walk away if you want to. If this is not interesting to you and you're just here to talk with your friends, the lobby is over there and you can absolutely go do that. And you bet your bottom dollar that everybody perked up after that because I called them on their crap.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so being able to do that with people in the moment, it wasn't part of what I was planning on talking about. But when you do this all the time and you're a performer, you learn to pull those things in and put them into moments when you need to. Like I have friends that I'm like, I know that if I go out with this friend, we're supposed to go to lunch and then do this thing and then do this errand. And you know that that there's good intentions there. But you kind of just block off the time because you're like, it's to hell in a handbasket once we get together.
Yeah.
Who knows what could happen? And
Yeah.
so I learned that because I'm a very planned person of like this block of time, we just let the wind take us.
Yeah. Now I have to ask, because you are a self-professed Swiftie. I know this about you and
hmm
everything else and stuff like that. How many times have you seen her?
So live, I've only gotten to see her once.
Okay.
Um, so we agreed that this next time, my partner and I would go together without kids because I had to go. I took my two daughters with me
Yeah.
last time, and then we would take kids a second time. And then I was like, if I get to go a third time by myself, I will,
Okay. Fair.
because it's just so hard to get tickets. And I was like,
God.
my bank account was like, "Are you sure you want to do this?" And I was like, "Once in a lifetime thing, just in case she never goes again."
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. But I know how difficult it was, and I know what a big production that was and everything
hmm
else. And I know you're a fan because you reference her stuff a lot, which I think is awesome.
Yeah. Well, I figure there's got to be a little bit of sparkle. It's kind of like Elle Woods putting her resume in pink on a pink piece of paper
Yeah,
with pink
for
sparkly
sure.
ink. That is my um, gift to the world, is a little bit more sparkle.
Yeah,
But
I love it.
yeah, we have talked about a lot of really great things, and I feel like
Yeah,
we're going to have another podcast episode at some point.
would
If you
love
have
it.
any questions that came up, or like, oh my God, I wish you would have talked more about this, or here's a great study that I found that you mentioned but didn't have the numbers for, Spotify. If you go over there, you can put any of those in. You can ask Spin any questions and I will get those to him. You can ask us any questions of things you want to see on the podcast. And then before we wrap up, I want to ask you two more questions. One, where can people find you if they're like, hey, I want to connect with you?
Okay, very easy. Connecting with me, best way you can find me on LinkedIn. If you punch Spin Man in, I will come up. I'm in a pink suit and sunglasses. You will find me. Um, Email address is just spin@perseverenow.org. And our website, if you want to check out what we're doing at Persevere, is perseverenow.org.
Beautiful. And then the question that we ask all of the people that come on is, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Okay, so it goes in two ways. If you asked me when I was young, I would have told you I was going to be a neurosurgeon. I wanted to be a brain surgeon. That was my dream from grade school until I got to high school and realized math wasn't my thing, and got further on and said that's a lot of school that I don't want to do. So that went by the wayside. But if you ask me now what I want to be when I grow up, I want to own and operate a 10-room boutique hotel on a beach somewhere. That's what I want to do. I
Oh,
want I want people to come and hang out at my place and have a good time, and me make sure that they have a good time in an awesome environment where there's sun and sand and tropical drinks. That's what I want to be when I grow up.
I like that. I hear that Aruba is really nice.
Yeah, I've heard of Aruba, and I've heard of like this the Seychelles, and I've heard of some other places where it's kind of like, yeah, I could probably do that there and not. I might want to do it in Australia though, just so that I can get the accent.
Oh my
Because
God,
I've been
I
there
love
long enough,
Australia.
then maybe I could get the accent. I don't know that my wife thinks I'm a knucklehead and says you're a little too old for your accent to change. But if it's what I want to be when I grow up, that's what I want to be.
I mean, if I had to pick a kind of person to be, I'd either be European or Australian. So because I want an accent. So I
Yeah,
totally
for sure.
understand that.
Absolutely.
I
Absolutely.
love that. So I'm going to hold you to it.
Okay.
And when you finally have one, I'm going to be so excited to come and visit.
100%. And guess what? You can stay for free because we talked about it on your podcast.
Done and done. So then we can have another podcast at that point and talk about all the things that you're doing as leading that.
Yes, because we'll be able to do it from a hammock with a drink in our hand.
Oh, that sounds great. I
Yes,
am totally for that.
for
Um,
sure.
but thank you so much for being on the podcast. And again, if you guys have any questions, visit us on Spotify and we will see you next week on Full Strength Leader.
All right. Thanks, Cabrina. This was awesome. Thanks so much.
That's a wrap on today's episode of Full Strength Leader. Take the lesson from today into your leadership this week and see what magic happens. If this episode hit home, I want to hear from you. Drop your questions, your reaction, or your biggest takeaway on Spotify in the comments under this episode. I read every single one, and your questions shape what we talk about next. And if you thought of someone during the show, do me a favor and share this episode with them. And don't forget to follow along so you never miss an episode. You can find me to connect and work with me directly at KabrinaAshley.com. Full Strength Leader starts here. We'll see you next week.